Welcome again to the $1 Million Career. And I have a special guest today. One of my best friends on the planet, Peter Gold, man of many talents, man of mystery, and just an incredible human being on many different levels. He's got a lot of wisdom. He's known to inform, inspire, and entertain people of all ages, races, creeds, anything on the planet. This guy's done it. I'm setting you up, Peter, but I'm telling you, man, I love this man.
I know it's a little bit much.
He's helped me so much all these years. Everyone in my family knows him. It's like the book according to Pete Gold. What would Pete Gold do? You know. So, anyways, without further ado, Peter Gold, from your hideaway there in Burlington, Vermont. How are you, brother?
I'm doing well, thank you. Just a quick correction. Burlington is the big city 40 miles west of me on the shores of Lake Champlain, but I live just north of Vermont's highest peak, Mount Mansfield, in a little tiny village called Jeffersonville.
You know, I don't know what I was thinking about, Peter. Burlington, Vermont. I was thinking about the Burlington Coat Company or something. I don't know, but yeah.
I mean, Burlington is, yeah, Burlington's, it's, that for me, Burlington's got 40,000 people. For me, that's the big city.
Yeah, man. That's right, man. No, it's all good. So I'm in Abu Dhabi right now, so I'll have to apologize in advance if there's any telecommunications problems. But so Peter, you know, we did a podcast together probably about a year ago. I want to get you back on the show. So first of all, how are you feeling anyways? I know you're getting ready to have a surgery and you're doing some traveling, so we can kind of catch up a little bit first. Yeah.
Basically, I mean, I'm feeling pretty good. I may have said this to you once before, but you know, I'm like that classic old Ford pickup truck. The turn on the key and the motor works, and the motor works good. Transmission works. Turn on the radio, you can hear all the good stations. The lights turn on, but the fucking wheels are falling off and the suspension is shot. So that's what I'm going to do is get a new knee. And I've had two new hips in the last 5 years. And, you know, I'm slowly replacing shit with titanium and Teflon.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's the life of a Green Beret. So for those people who don't know Peter Gold, he was a U.S. Special Forces Green Beret for many years. Served over in Eastern Europe, other places. And so let's start off there, Peter. You know, since most people know, you know, what Special Forces is in Green Beret, we can start there, maybe move backwards and forwards, but take us kind of back to that period of time in your life where you first decided, I want to be a soldier. I want to be a Green Beret. What were you doing then anyways?
Well, those are two different things. I joined the Army in 1980, I think. 1980. And I was up in northern Vermont, working in the woods, doing construction work, probably drinking too much, probably taking too many recreational chemicals. And I needed a change, you know, and I was in my late 20s too. I was a lot older than most guys when they joined the Army, but I decided to enlist when I was about 28 years old. And because I thought, what else can I do where as long as I'm willing to work hard, they're going to teach me all kinds of new stuff and they're going to pay me and they're going to take care of me if I get hurt. I thought, I can't think, because I had been working before that. I'd spent time fighting wildfires in Idaho and Montana for the Forest Service and the state of Idaho. I'd worked in the oil patch down in southwestern Wyoming at Rock Springs for a couple of years. So I'd done a lot of interesting, challenging physical work, which I loved, but there was something missing. And joining the military, I thought would give me what was missing. And I wasn't sure what that was. Anyway, so I joined the Army in 1980 and I became a topographic / geodetic surveyor because it seemed like a really interesting job that would keep me outside. I'd be a field guy, and it would be something that I would translate into a civilian career down the road. You know, you go to school, get a civil engineering degree, become a surveyor, blah 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 blah. About 3 years into that enlistment, I was in Germany, most of the beginning of that enlistment, and we were surveying in Turkey at Incirlik Air Base down by Adana, which I'm sure you're familiar with that, with Incirlik. So we're surveying at Incirlik. This is back in like 1982, I think, and while we're there, and so just a little preface, I'm on a 10-man survey team. So that's usually about 6 field guys and 4 office guys. Out in the field measuring distance light and using different distance measurement equipment. And except for the level of technology of the equipment, the basic design of how we did this is the same as the people who've been doing it for hundreds of years, right? And then you come back in at dinner time and you give all this paperwork that you've been doing. One guy's reading on the theodolite, reading off numbers. The other guy's recording these with a pen on a piece of paper, right? This is right. And then you double check all your numbers. Then you turn it into the computing team at night. The computing team then takes that stack of paperwork and produced every day, and they turn that into geographic data, right? Yep. And you start drinking it. So the field team starts drinking as soon as we give them the paperwork. Those guys work until about 3 or 4 in the morning. Yeah, they work until about 3 or 4 in the morning, and then they're done. Then they start to drink. So they drink till a few hours after sunrise, and then they sleep all day. So that's the team, right? That's 10 guys, 10, 11 guys doing this. While we're there at Incirlik, after we've been there for a couple of weeks, these 2 guys show up from the Defense Mapping Agency in the States. One guy was an Air Force surveyor. The other guy was the DOD civilian. And they had this new piece of equipment. It was called a GPS, Global Positioning System Receiver. Wow. It was the size of an American Tourister suitcase. And they set it up. Yeah, they set it up on a tripod over this point that we had surveyed to in the center of Incirlik Air Base that we used for survey control. And it had taken us 10 days of 10 men working basically 24 hours around the clock to survey and do the paperwork and get, the location data in there to find that point. Anyway, this thing up. 3 times a day, they'd go out there every 8 hours, press a button, this thing would open. They'd take a cassette out, put another cassette in, take that cassette, bring it back to their hotel room, stick it in a reader, press a button. The only work that they did was transporting the cassette back and forth from the receiver to the reader. Other than that, they drank solid the whole time they were there. In 3 days, that thing, it proved our data right because we were a good team, we were professional. But in 3 days, it accomplished at a much higher level of accuracy what we had done in 2 weeks. These 2 guys with this thing. So that's the first GPS I ever saw. Well, for me, that was the handwriting on the wall because that was going to change the whole physical act of surveying. And it really has. That has just totally changed that business. So a year later, I decided I want to do something more and do something bigger and better with my military career. So a year later was when I decided to go into SF for the first time. So an SF slash airborne procurement team was doing a tour around all the bases in Germany. And I talked to these guys and they said, well, you got great scores and you're fit and, you know maps, blah, 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 blah. And so I put it in my paperwork and, I could go on and on. It's a great story, just how I got out of Germany. But long story short, I made it to the States. I went through it. This is back before selection. So I don't know if really? I think I've told you the story, but you may have forgotten. But this was my first go around at SF. So I went through what they called phase one, which was sort of a combination of really brutal selection in terms of the tax fucking with you. You have to pardon my language. Okay, good. So at any rate, phase one was a combination of that and all your basic skills, patrolling, survival, land navigation, plus a lot of harassment. So that happened in February of 1984. Yeah. And then in March of 1984, maybe early April, after I did that and I passed out of, so back in those days, you did that phase one, then phase two would be MOS phase, right? Okay. Whatever your job was. And phase three was Robin Sage. So basically kind of similar to today's a little different. And also today you have selection. In those days you didn't have selection. That didn't come on till like 1987, I think, somewhere in that vicinity. Anyway.
You didn't even have FAS or anything?
No. That was sort of rolled into phase one.
I got you. Okay.
Right? That was rolled into phase one. So in other words, in today's world, in basic skills phase, you don't have harassment PT. But back then, they would wake us up at like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning and run us out into the sawdust pit for 2 hours of combatives just for grins, especially if it was raining out. And then have us go back in, clean up, then go out for a run, then go have breakfast.
Yeah, right. Jesus.
Right. So anyway, while I was waiting for my a class date, because in those days I was pretty ambitious, so I wanted to become a medic. So I was waiting for my class date for 300 F1, which was the SF medic course at Fort Sam, Houston. And it was a Friday night, and me and a buddy of mine who had been through my that class with me, and he was a Marine. He'd been a Marine. And he was the one who had invented our company mascot, which was Gumby, Semper Gumby, always flexible. So he and I were drinking in Bennigan's in Fayetteville, and this is a tragic story here. And then and I'll never forget. I was drinking Johnny Walker Black doubles washed down with long neck buds. And at some point, very poor decision making, we decided we were going to go to a party that we heard about that was over at the Holiday Inn on the other side of town.
This is great. Go ahead, man.
I see, and I can laugh about this now, but shortly thereafter, I got pulled over by one of Columbia County's finest on Bragg Boulevard.
Shit, I know exactly what
and
that is.
Rule 17. Yeah.
So much for us at that point.
At that point, yeah. And so what's interesting is the company I was in. They wanted to keep me, right? And they were doing everything they could to keep me around for 6 months, and then they could put me back into the course. But the regimental commander decided, because this was around the time that and again, with good reason, the anti-drunk driving campaign was taken off in the United States. And hey, I agree with it, but I was collateral damage. So, so the regimental commander said, basically decided they wanted to make a poster child out of me. So after about 4 or 5 months, they basically said, "You're gone. Got to get out of here." So I went over to the 82nd, and I knew some guys over there, and I got myself a slot as a medic in a scout troop with the 1st of the 17th Air Cav over there, which back in the day was the Air Mobile Recon arm of division. And it was a great unit. And I spent the rest of my active duty career with those guys. So that was SF iteration, which I never finished, number 1.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go into the mountain school now.
Yeah.
Okay. So while I'd been in Germany a couple years before, I had read about this mountain infantry company that was being put together in the New England National Guard in Vermont, in Soldiers Magazine, and that they were looking for guys with airborne experience or ranger experience, or something like that. Yeah. So after I got out in 1985, I ETS'd and I got out of the Army, and I decided I was going to go to college and get that civil engineering degree. And I decided my family home is in Massachusetts, Western Mass. So I went back there, hung out for a while, and moved up to Vermont, decided to go to the University of Vermont for that degree. And I was going to work, and decided to join the Guard because I still had a 2-year reserve commitment. And so I'll join this mountain outfit because I like playing in the mountains. And in July of '85, I went through their school. And when I went through the school, I almost was the honor grad, but I wasn't quite the honor grad. So the guy that was the honor grad received a real fancied up Silva Ranger compass as his award. But what was better was the sergeant major at the school came up to me and said, "Hey, how would you like to be an instructor here?"
Nice. But
yeah.
You can't go to Bennigan's.
And so, no, I can't go to Bennigan's. There's not even a Bennigan's in the state of Vermont.
It's always probably a good thing,
It's a way good thing. So at any rate, yeah. So, I thought for about half a second. Let's see, full-time job, full-time pay, and benefits, and medical coverage, and guaranteed 30 days vacation a year to teach mountaineering, ice climbing, backcountry skiing, winter survival. Wow. Throw me in the briar patch.
Yeah, exactly.
So I did it.
Interesting.
So I ended up being in the mountain community in Vermont full-time, basically, as an instructor at the school for the next 5 years. And then I worked at the mountain battalion as their chief mountain guide, put together their assault climber program, their rescue climber program. I wrote cliff assault doctrine for the battalion, developed a bunch of shit like that, developed training areas, did a lot of rough terrain construction, trail work, and bridges. Had a great time. Had a wonderful time, but I got bored. I have a boredom problem. I have a big boredom problem. So I got bored again. So then in 1995, a team of guys from 19th Group down in Rhode Island, National Guard SF, came up to Vermont, and they wanted to do some ice climbing training in the wintertime. By this time, I'm over at the Mountain Battalion, and my boss there called me in his office and said, "Hey, these guys want to do some training. Are you free?" And I did a lot of this kind of work those days. It was kind of an entrepreneurial job I had. I was in charge of all this stuff, but it was a National Guard unit. So I had a lot of flexibility in what I did, how I did it, who I did it with. Anyway, so I trained these guys, and I ended up 2 years in a row. In the wintertime, they would come up and spend 4 or 5 days with me, and I would take them ice climbing and teach them a bunch of stuff. And the weather was never good when we did it. And the second time it was really bad. And yet we had a really good time. And so they said to me then, they said, you know, you should come do this with us full time. You should come join our unit and do this. And I thought that'd be great. And I said, does that mean I got to go? Because by now selection had come on board with SF, right? In 1987. This is Special Forces Assessment and Selection. So, so this is 1996 right now. And I said, or 95 actually, I said, does that mean I have to go through selection? Well, I said, yeah, but you know, you're a mountain guy. You're in pretty good shape. You could do it. I thought about it and I decided to do it. So long story short, I did it in Camp McCall, 1997. I went through, and when I went through, I went through in 97 and I finished in 98.
Yeah. Oh.
And then I went through SEER in 98 as well. So by the time I finished all that, 1998, I was 46 or 47 years old. I was the oldest guy to have finished selection and the Q course. There were other guys that were older that had been through, like back in the 50s, you know, a lot of Eastern Europeans, back when we had guys from Hungary and Finland and Poland, Czechoslovakia, what have you. But that's different. But basically, once the whole selection thing was said, I'm the oldest guy to have done that. And that record held, I think, roughly until close to 2008, 2009, something like that.
Really?
Pretty much a 10-year record. Yeah. Anyway,
nice,
so, but you know, the reason why, and I may have talked about this last time with you, but I'll reiterate it. The thing that got me through was all my experience climbing in mountains. Because when you're climbing on a mountain, you can't quit. If you quit on a mountain climb, you die. Right. If you quit and stop and say, I don't want to do this anymore, you're going to die. Because no matter where you are, if you don't want to do it anymore, well, then you have to go back. And down climbing what you climbed up is just as hard. So you still got to do it, right? You have to keep climbing anyway. And the thing about something like selection or, you know, what the SEALs go through, or, you know, any rigorous selection/training program is they're not going to kill you. So if you quit, you stop where you are, say, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to play. They say, okay, no problem. Nobody argues with you. Yeah. And then you get in a truck and take you home. They give you coffee and donuts. You grab your duffel bag and you go, right? But you're going to survive. The thing that mountains taught me is that doesn't matter how bad it is, you can't ever stop. You cannot quit. And for me, that was my secret power. Was that? I mean, I was not in better shape than anybody. You know, I've never been any great heroic athlete. I'm in decent shape, and I spent a lot of time rucking in the mountains in Vermont getting ready for this. But mentally and emotionally, it was understanding the difference between being uncomfortable and and not. And being uncomfortable is no reason to quit.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's it. Yeah. So then I got into SF and finished the course in '98, and then that's how I finished my career. Was doing a bunch of stuff. I was in the Guard in SF in 19th Group, both on the East Coast, A219 out of Rhode Island, and then I moved out to Utah in 2003, and I joined 1st Battalion out there, and I was in 2 different companies out there. I helped stand up mountain teams both in Rhode Island and 2 different teams out in Utah. And then I got into some other more exotic SF stuff, doing kind of ground-based intel gathering type stuff. And that's how I finished my career. And I finished my career for me as a professional NCO in the United States Army, which even though I'm retired, I still semi-consider myself as. I achieved, for me, the acme of my career. I retired as a team sergeant, an SF team sergeant, which no better thing I could think I could have ever attained.
Yeah, and you also did. So, I mean, what are some lessons learned from being part of an elite 12-man, ODA, operating in harsh conditions, the kind of things, the development of that brotherhood. What are some things that you learned from that you can apply in real life now?
Some obvious things, teamwork and the ability to subordinate your ego to what the team needs to do. That's right up front. And it's obvious, but you got a bunch of hard charging type A guys together.
Yeah.
And it can be difficult sometimes to achieve that. So in order for that to happen, you have to have the ideal team has a pretty egalitarian structure in the sense that, people aren't referring to each other by their rank. You're on a first name basis. At the same time, you need to have a strong team sergeant and a strong team leader, the captain. Although the captain is not that important, because I've seen a lot of teams. I've been on teams where we didn't have an officer. We just had a good team sergeant and usually had a warrant officer too. But again, not always. But so that team sergeant is vital. So that team sergeant has got to, if you have ego, competition, confrontation, conflicts on a team, the thing that will destroy a team is a team sergeant that lets that shit get out of hand. Right? Yeah. It's kind of like, that's why you call him the team daddy. It's like a father with a bunch of rambunctious kids. Once in a while, you got to take them and you got to grab them by the scruff of the neck and knock their heads together and say, hey, you guys got to figure out how to work together. And it's not a choice. You got to do it, right? So at the same time, like I say, a good team is a relatively flat structure. If you have guys that have been through, they've all been through the same training, and if you train well together, everybody pretty much respects everybody else. Everybody's got their strengths and weaknesses, but your strengths will complement somebody else's deficiencies, and all told, your average output will rise above any other type of group. The other good thing about SF is, this is going to sound, I don't care how it sounds. Intellectually, a good SF team is a cut above any other type of small military group because we do our own planning.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure you've heard this before. I'm sure you've seen this, right? But, other types of organizations, you have, depending on how it's configured, but you have some sort of planning entity, some cell, some higher level that's going to plan an operation and hand it to you. They're going to give you the folder. They're going to give you all this stuff. In Special Forces, we do our own planning. And frequently, a commander might have a mission that needs to be undertaken, and he might involve 2 or 3, maybe 4 teams, whatever. And it's a competition of ideas. It's a competition of thought, right? Who did the most realistic assessment of their problem? Who has the most realistic assessment of their resources, and who has got the best space plans, right? Primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. Who has looked further down I don't know the word, but who has really looked out there as to the second, third, and fourth order effects of everything you do on a mission, and tried to account for that kind of stuff. And then you present that plan to the commander. And he's going to see these different presentations, and also how well is that presented, because you could have right. Well, does that mean they're not really sure about what they're talking about? So these are all things that I learned in SF, the importance of planning to the nth degree. Now, a little sidebar. It's kind of like Mike Tyson said, or variation of what Mike Tyson said, but every plan's great till you get punched in the face.
Right, exactly.
Right? And the military thing is, all plans are great until first contact, and then it all changes. But the advantage to planning and rehearsals, in addition, is that it makes you think about what ifs. It makes you think about backups, so that when things change, you've probably at some point ranged in your head through that possibility. So you might, so you have some ideas in place. Whereas if you don't plan well and you don't rehearse, then when unforeseen things happen, you're left there holding your blank in your hand.
Yeah, what's always impressed me in my work with SF down at JRTC and other places, working with both the SOTF, which is a company level unit, as well as the ODAs, is the whole process of the CONOP, the concept of operations and how they present that, and how they do red teaming. The red teaming has always been really fascinating to me, because I've always felt that more people in the corporate world should be doing that red teaming, challenging the plan. What if, And, that always really impressed me, that people usually left their egos at home, back at the barracks, and it was all like one team, one fight. We got to get this right, because you're talking about people's lives,
Yes. Yeah. And in addition to the red team is something that you really don't see much of in the civilian world, but it's rehearsals.
Yes, exactly.
Rehearsals and inspections. Inspections are I spent the first 15 years of my career in the regular military. Now, most of that was in pretty small specialized units, but still it wasn't SF. And I went through a lot of inspections, and I know SF guys hate inspections, right? This is one of the weaknesses of SF guys, is they hate inspections. It's like, hey, I'm a grown man. I'm a grown NCO. I don't need to have somebody look at my shit.
Yeah.
However, when you're involved in something where people's lives are on the line and it's mission imperative, you do not want to be the guy that forgot the specific key that would open the specific lock. Or you don't want to be the engineer that forgot the lock cutters. Or you don't want to be the guy that forgot the explosives, whatever it is, that specific item that's key to mission completion. So,
for me, I'll take this back to your experience in mountain climbing, so it's like when guys get kitted up for a gun battle, right? There's a process.
Yes.
You've got to wear your kit the same way every time. Or you're jumping
Yes.
out of a plane. You got to know where the knife is.
Yes.
You cut the cord. So talk about mountain climbing. So how that relates to what you're talking about, because I would imagine mountain climbing, and I think you've talked about this before, you got to have all your equipment on the same exact way every time, because you don't have a lot of time to think, where's the knife or where's the clamp. That goes back to what you're talking about, inspections,
Yeah, exactly. So for starters, I was thinking about this morning while I was driving over the mountain, picking up some groceries over in Stowe, and how little things have big effects. So in terms of inspections, especially mountain climbing in the wintertime, when you have lots of things that are mechanical, like crampons that go on your boots and ice axes and things like that, well, you want to inspect the little bolts, the screws that hold the crampons together well before you're going to take them out. You want to tighten them up every time and make sure they're good and make sure the points are sharp. Get a file the points of your crampons, file the pick on your ice axe. You want to make sure all that stuff is good. You don't want to be in a position 10, 12,000 feet up on a glacier somewhere on the side of a mountain with the wind hawking, temperature dropping, getting dark at night, and all of a sudden your crampon falls apart. And you don't have a spare, right? Because you don't carry spare crampons. They're heavy. You don't carry spares. You make sure the stuff that you have works the first time. One of the lessons that I learned at the mountain school many years ago, and I've taken it forward ever since, is that before you can get good at advanced Hollywood, high-speed, Teflon-coated, Superman, Batman, SEAL Team 6, Delta Special Forces, A#1 skills, you got to have your basic skills down pat.
Yes.
That's mountaineering, that's gunfighting, that's driving, that's survival, no matter what it is. You have to have your base, because when you're tired and you're hungry and you're thirsty and you're hurt and you're sick and feverish and you're working on 4 days without sleep and you're scared out of your fucking mind, your body's going to go back to basic muscle memory, basic instinctive memory. When you can't even think through, that's what you're going to do. So if you don't have those good basic skills burnt into you down to the bone, you may fail. And so that's a side, right? So anyway, so inspections, make sure you have all your stuff. Rehearsals, so that when you have a plan, rehearsals are what shows you what doesn't really work, shows you your assumptions that were faulty. And so when you present a con-op, it's not really a rehearsal. And in the civilian world, it's more like con-op presentation. People don't generally rehearse things, but a con-op is it's like a verbal rehearsal, right? We're going to rehearse our concepts to the commander. And so
hey,
a
Pete,
good
for purposes of the people that aren't familiar with SF, a con-op is a concept of operations.
Right. So, and the closest thing to in the civilian world, that would simply be brief a plan. Give us a presentation about the next quarter sales plan. That's basically your con-op, right? And there's two things here. Number one, the big weak point in the U.S. military is over-reliance on PowerPoint, to the extent that frequently all people know when they do a presentation is what's on the screen. Right. And so if they're asked questions about what's on the screen and the commander wants to go do a deep dive further, get into the granularity of what's up there, and they can't answer that, well, that's an obvious tell that they don't know what they're talking about. Right. So the more you know about that's why the people that should brief a plan should be the people that put the plan together.
Right, exactly.
Because they know it backwards and forwards and they know the details. And in a rehearsal, when you do a rehearsal of a mission, that's when you realize, oh, our transportation plan, we can't get there in X amount of time with the Y amount of people because we factored this wrong. Or this river, the current of this river that we wanted to float to the bridge objective, it flows too fast. We're not going to be able to control our movement down there. Or conversely, could be too slow. Well, we might need to have either oars or a quiet motor or something. These are all things that a rehearsal will show you, right? And these are things where U.S. special operators have gotten really good at is rehearsals.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
But like for example, JRTC down at Fort Polk, that's a mission readiness exercise. I think that training is some of the best in the world. They've got other training centers around the world, but yeah, the U.S. military does really do that very, very well. They train hard. I mean, those JRTC missions that they do. That's the real deal, man. They'll bring a whole brigade, 3,000 to 6,000 soldiers. They'll have SF down there, and it's like it's nothing that anybody's ever really seen. I mean, they train very, 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 very hard. People get killed down there, they get injured, and that's why the U.S. military is the best military in the world, because exactly right. They rehearse.
Right, and units don't necessarily get good scores down there.
Exactly.
And that's key, right? One of the things that has really become apparent in the last year now, and last half a year, since the Russians went into Ukraine in February, is that all these fancy exercises that they'd been holding for the last few years, this much vaunted post-Soviet contemporary Russian armored and airborne and special operations force, was a hollow shell. And that all these exercises they'd held had been very much like the old Soviet exercises, very scripted.
Yes.
Designed to make people look good, designed to impress the leadership, not designed to make the soldiers be good.
Yeah, because down in JRTC, man, they'll have vaunted airborne units, brigade level units go down there and get their asses handed to them. And those lieutenant colonels are not going to get promoted. So, I mean, some people go down there and have their careers wrecked. You know what I mean? It's a true meritocracy. That opposition force down there are Rangers, and these guys don't mess around, man. It's pretty intense. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. The way we train and rehearse is unlike anybody else does.
Yeah, and yeah. I mean, and you can see this all the time now. And one of the advantages, I say advantages, the ending of this war is not written yet. So there's a lot of hardship and blood, sweat, gold that's going to be expended before this is all over. But at any rate, one of the advantages the Ukrainians have is that USSF and US infantry guys and Canadians and Brits have been training them now since 2014.
Yeah.
And that's helped a lot. Okay. Hey, I'm going to take a quick break and grab a cup of water. I'll be back in about 10 seconds.
Okay, Pete. All right, man. Peter Gold, I'm telling you, this guy is an amazing person. We're going to be talking about books, music, whiskey, working hard, what it's like to be a man.
Okay, I'm back.
All right. Hey, there you are, Pete. Yeah. So anyway, what kind of advice would you give to young people, young men, young women, getting out of college? I mean, if you could kind of impart some wisdom to these people how do you successfully successfully navigate this new world that we live in, that for some people is very, very confusing and a very scary place. I mean, based on your experience, what are some things you tell people?
I'm not sure if I'm the right person to do this. I mean, it took me, I got to where I am by a very circuitous, complicated, sometimes bruising process. I have not navigated my life in a perfect way. Right?
Nobody has.
So, I mean, I have to preface it by saying that right there. I've been arrested. I've been a less than perfect human being. But at this point, I'm doing okay, and I hope to do better. So what can I say? I'm going to keep it to kids I know in the military.
Yeah.
Because I've spent so much time there. And some people might think I'm a stick in the mud, but for starters, and this applies to anybody, but it really helps to know who you are yourself.
Yeah.
And make sure that your opinion of yourself is more important to you than anybody else's opinion of you.
Yeah, right.
Okay? And in today's world, and it's hard for me because I don't do social media, right? I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on any of that stuff. I consider that all a huge time suck. The good Lord put me on this earth with a limited amount of time and energy. I'm 71 years old. I don't have enough time left on this earth to spend it staring at a screen. It's not going to happen. Or care about what other people have to say about me on that screen. That's not going to happen either. I understand, though, what kids go through. That's their life, right? It's a different life than I had. I think one of the most important things is, and it's hard to develop your own identity as a young person. So it's important for kids to discover strengths. That strength could be learning how to cook with their mom or dad. That strength could be playing sports, being a great shortstop, on a little league team, and then playing in, junior high school and high school and so forth. That strength could be an individual sport. You could be a runner. You could be a hiker. You could be a fisherman, a fisherwoman. You could hunt. You could go out with with an older uncle or your dad or whatever, and learn how to deer hunt, bird hunt, and do that. But find some sort of skill, be it or a mental skill. Become an avid reader. Spend all your time in the library, but find something that you do and that's not done for you, that you're doing with your brain and your hands and your feet and your guts and your spirit and your heart, that you love to do, right? You don't have to be the best in the world at it. You just have to be the best you can be at it. And that will give you satisfaction. And then out of that satisfaction comes a sense of self-worth. And out of that sense of self-worth comes self-respect, and then the self-discipline to get better at what you do. But the key is to find something that you like to do that you can get good at. I think that too many kids growing up, so this isn't just to kids, this is people that have kids too. Too many parents use screens. Kids, I see 6-year-olds with their own phones now.
Oh, that's crazy.
Their own tablets. And so these kids are using these screens. It's like surrogate parent. It's like a surrogate teacher, right? And so much stuff takes place on those. So you can you can live a virtual life, right? I mean, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you will be able to get very cheap augmented reality, either headsets or sunglasses or whatever, and it'll be run by, Zuckerberg's Facebook or Meta or Twitter, whoever the flavor of the year or month is. But that stuff will be available, guaranteed. But for instance, for me, climbing, my passion for years, you can spend hours learning how to climb on a video game and in an augmented reality thing, but there's no, what's the word I want to use here?
No substitute for being out in nature.
There's no substitute. Thank you, sir. 71, my memory shit is kicking in. There's no substitute
for actually being out there doing it.
There's no substitute for real rock, for dirt and lichen on real rock, for knowing the difference between climbing on dry lichen and moist lichen. Because dry lichen, it's a little dirty. You can rub it off and you can climb on that because that's dry rock. But if that lichen is moist and you step on it, well, that's all little bits of oily chlorophyll in those green parts of the lichen. When you smear it on the rock, that's like greased owl shit, and you go flying off that hole. And a computer won't teach you that, or the bugs, or the humidity, or the fear. Anyway, so what do I tell kids coming up? Find something that's
good advice.
A passion. And conversely for parents, animals. Have those kids around animals. Have a dog or a cat, or have them around horses, or taking care of another living thing is the really important lesson for kids. So being the person that feeds your dog, takes the dog for a walk, that's responsible for emptying the cat litter box, seems like simple shit, but it helps teach that kid that they are not alone in the world.
That's good. Yeah. And then, even things like playing an instrument, just experimenting with several things, because it seems like a lot of parents now, I call these people helicopter parents. They've got a program all set for their kids. They're going to take ballet. They're going to take dance. They're going to play lacrosse. They're going to do this, but the kids never really have a chance to come up with their own program. So
right.
I've always thought that things like letting your kids experiment with an instrument is a good idea.
Yeah. I learned how to play the piano when I was a kid. I still have my piano here in the house that I had when I was, as a teenager playing. I haven't played in years. I got arthritis in my hands now. I keep telling myself I'm going to play again. Maybe by the time you and Stephanie come up here to visit, I will have started again, but who knows? But playing an instrument, my brother, 5 years younger than me, has been playing the fiddle since he was 6 years old, and he still plays. And he's in 3 different bands, and he's a great musician.
Wow.
And I'm envious of him. I'm really envious of him. No, an instrument is great, and it's good for the mind. People that play music, it helps enhance their sort of some of the processes in the brain that some people say are close to what makes a good mathematician. And I can't speak to exactly why that is, but it gives you a stronger brain.
I wonder how difficult it would be for somebody that's our age to learn how to play an instrument.
I think the difficulty would be physically more than anything else. Like in my case, the fact that my hands hurt. But if I do it a lot, I think they would hurt less. I just have to bite the bullet and do it. But I mean, look at Leon White.
Yeah.
Playing guitar. Leon plays guitar. He's constantly learning new stuff.
Is he really?
Constantly working away. Yeah. Whenever we were working, I don't know if you remember, but whenever we had those little drinking episodes in Leon's room, there'd be a guitar in there. He's always got his guitar in there.
Now,
Yeah.
when did he learn how to play guitar, though? I mean, is that something he picked up late in life or was it early in life or what?
I don't know. Leon's interesting. He's got an interesting backstory too. He's done a lot of different things.
Leaping Leo.
Yeah. But
he jumped into the Orange Bowl with Billy Eider, didn't he?
Jumped into the what?
I think he jumped into the Orange Bowl with.
I don't
Eider.
know.
They were part of the parachute
way back
team.
When. Way back when. It could have been when they were both Halo.
Yeah.
Leaping Leon. Yeah.
Leaping Leon. Yeah. He jumped in the.
Yeah.
Those are some crazy dudes, man. Yeah.
Oh, I miss those guys.
Yeah.
So okay. Goddamn, where were we at? Oh, musical instruments. Yeah.
Where were we at?
Yeah. No, musical instruments, but again, part of that going to young people is, and another thing is, as going to that musical instrument and reading or being good at math is follow your own path, right? Yeah. Again, this is harder for kids now than when I was growing up, but when I was a kid, and even to this day, I'm still like this. I've sort of been my own person. If there's something going on that everybody's doing, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I was a kid growing up, and it might have been because I was the oldest, and so I was sort of the trailblazer for my brothers. But if there was something that everybody said is the thing to do, I was like, yeah, I'm not sure about that. And then as I got older, it would be books. Everybody was reading The Hobbit for years, and the Lord of the Rings, right? And so I didn't read those things until like 20 years after I heard about them, and then I read them, and I thought, well, these are great, but and so okay, The Old Man, the show.
Oh my God, The Old Man. That series was just terrible, man.
It sucks. So Thursday night last week was the series ending, right? And I didn't watch it because I was watching live track and field world championships out of Eugene, Oregon, which I've been watching for the last 10 days. And I realized the next day, I missed The Old Man. And then I realized I don't fucking care because it sucks.
That was. And I was so disappointed. I mean, Jeff Bridges, one of the greatest actors ever. I love that guy.
Right.
I mean, I love Jeff Bridges. He stole money from whoever the hell was paying the salaries on it. He stole money because he was terrible. The screenwriting was terrible. That show was an abomination. It was just pathetic.
Have you finished the book?
Yes,
have you finished the Thomas?
Yeah.
Isn't that a great book?
He's got his dogs back. Oh, that book is unbelievable. That book is very, very realistic. I mean, that guy did some serious research because that's what a guy like that would actually do. Have
you read any other Thomas Perry?
No, I haven't, but I was going to ask you, what would be your next recommendation for Thomas Perry?
Of Thomas Perry books?
Yeah. He's a great writer.
I would say Butcher's Boy and Let Sleeping Dogs Lie.
Now, I will preface this because my immediate reaction, Pete, was going to say, I'm going to order them. But I talked to Stephanie last night. And as you know, she created a Dewey Decimal System for my library in my house. Okay? I had so many. I don't know if I told you, I've got so many books in my library now. I had a library built. She says, "You got so many books. How are you gonna classify these?" And I said, "Well, I'm gonna put the like the history books here, and the Africa books over here, and the political science books here, and the health and fitness books here."
Hello?
She goes, Yeah. and she says, you can't do that. Why don't I just do the Dewey Decimal? Stephanie's like really smart. She actually researched the Dewey Decimal System, how you classify books.
Yeah.
They're all classified now by the Dewey Decimal System, and I have a printout. It's like the old card catalog thing, I've got a printout of that thing. So all the books are classified. And after I got here to Abu Dhabi, she calls me on the phone and she says, I went down in the library to look for a book, and there was a stack of like 15 books that you had just read and just purchased. And I didn't catalog them. So I cataloged them, and then I was putting them in your bookshelves. There's no room. You're tapped out, man. She says, you're tapped out. Have you read every single one of those books? And I said, I've read a lot of them. I've read a lot of them twice, actually. But yeah, there's probably 20, I don't know, I'd probably say 20% of the books I still haven't read. She goes, read the books that you haven't read, and then you can order some more books. So I got a lot of reading to do, because there is literally no more room in my house, because I have bookshelves upstairs in the living room. Those are all full. I mean, I'm literally, I'm going to have to start covering up windows in my house,
Well, okay. So I read something the other day, I forget who the guy was, if he's an author or whatever, but it really touched home. He said, a good library is aspirational.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So he said, I've read maybe 30% of the books that I own. And the rest of he said, if I have a book, that means it's something, not only am I going to get to it someday, but I'm going to get to it and reread it. I'm going to use this book.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This book is going to work for me. And so I kind of use that as a
aspirational. Good. I like that.
Yeah, as a model. So like my fiction books, I just went through and culled out a bunch of books and took them down to the local library for their 4th of July book sale. And I give them, periodically I go through and I find books that, okay, I'm not going to read this again. And I'll take them down there, and they either use them there, or the librarian has a program where she donates books to the local correctional institute for guys to read. Right. So because I like the idea of recycling books.
Yeah.
Right. And but I have books, for instance, that I may never read until the power goes out.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because they're until you can't get such and such a technology working anymore. And how did people do this 200 years ago? I have books like that, right? That are just there. I have books that are just there if the power goes out and you can't use Wikipedia and you can't go on, get a YouTube demonstration on how to do a certain task. I have a book that'll tell you how to do that with pictures.
Hey man, I still have a complete set of Encyclopedia Britannica, man. I'm
envious. That's an amazing thing to have.
I have Encyclopedia Britannica. You can go in there and find out anything you want. I don't even need the internet. I love diving into those books, man.
Yeah. There's nothing like it. You and I, we've spoken about this before, but yeah, books and the love of books is an incredible passion to have.
Yeah, I
think.
Well, you know what? I find myself reading more and more fiction now. Particularly, I mean, not necessarily the classics. I mean, I've got most of the classics, but fiction is really good, because I think you develop what's called theory of mind. When you read fiction, particularly like really good writers, you can learn how to solve life's mysteries and problems through other people, because these writers can develop characters that have flaws, that have to overcome obstacles, that can think through problems, kind of like the old man, And
Yes.
you can take a lot of that thought process and use it to solve your own problems. Because theory of mind is like, if you're reading a book about a guy cheating on his wife, right? You're going to learn about all the consequences of what happens to people who cheat on their wife, the worst case scenarios. So maybe the next time you think about doing that, you'll think back to that fictional book that was written by Dostoevsky or Tolstoy and Anna Karenina, right? I mean, who hasn't read Anna Karenina and thought to themselves, I will never cheat on my wife, because it has catastrophic consequences in that book. It affects people. Anna commits suicide at the end. She jumps in front of a train. It impacts her husband, her sister, the cataclysmal effect of having an affair in that book is enough to stop anybody in their tracks. And that's a fictional book written by Tolstoy. You know what I mean? So that's why I like to read fiction, because you can learn the mistakes and learn the wisdom through other people, because that's what great writers do. They bring people to life. It's instructional. You know what I mean?
I would add to that also, one of the reasons, maybe the reason, that good writing is so powerful that way is because not only can you learn from it, but you're there.
Yeah.
You're in that place. For me, the mark of a good book is when I sit down, I forget time. I forget where I am, and my head goes into the book, right? And I afterwards, I think I can recreate the scene. I can recreate the sky they talk about. I can do this right now. I can recreate the building, the people, the sights and sounds and smells and tastes that they talk about. I've been reading. I've been an avid reader since I was a kid.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take Hemingway, right? People think Hemingway, For Whom the Bell Tolls, and all of his great books, The Old Man and the Sea. Man, you know what my favorite book of Hemingway is? It's called Islands in the Stream.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know of it. I don't know if I ever read that one.
That book has, and if you look at this, that book is known to have, amongst people that know books, to have the greatest fight scene ever. Hemingway fights this guy on a dock, and it's actually based on a true story. Hemingway actually got into a fight with a guy on a dock in the Key West and beat the living hell out of this guy. And he was a rich guy from like the Hamptons or something. Hemingway just beat this guy to a pulp. True story. There's different versions, but in the book, The Islands in the Stream, there's a fight scene that goes on for like 25 pages. And Hemingway does a brilliant job of leading up to the fight, Some guys,
now I have to. Now I have to find the book, because I'm trying to think back. I read a bunch of Hemingway when I was in high school, and shortly thereafter, and I haven't read any since. And I think, for instance, Islands in the Stream and Movable Feast, neither one of those have I read. And I probably need to.
Back, man. A Movable Feast is unreal, man. Because the great thing about Hemingway is that everything is, to a degree, autobiographical. You know what I mean? The Sun Also Rises happened in Spain with a group of people. That was his first big book. That's all based upon something that actually happened. Hemingway actually took a trip with these people that he met in Paris to the bullfights in Pamplona, and everybody was having an affair and everybody else, and people got in fights. All that really happened. Hemingway just fictionalized it. For Whom the Bell Tolls, that's based upon Hemingway, Anyway, so I get what you're saying. You read and Tolstoy's another one. You read Tolstoy, Hemingway, Dostoevsky, man, you get sucked right in.
I have to say, I am woefully ill-read when it comes to classics. I've read the Iliad a couple of times.
Oh, that's
and the Aeneid. But
how about the Odyssey, man?
Yes. I've read that stuff. Again, it's been years. I've read a couple different translations of Beowulf. But honestly speaking, and my mom, she was a librarian, right?
Yes.
And she was a smart lady. And she could never understand why my favorite material was really well-written thrillers.
Yeah.
Detective and crime fiction is what detective, crime fiction, and espionage fiction is what I like. And I'm picky about it. But yeah, that's what I read. I'm a genre fiction guy.
How about Bernard Cromwell, man?
Oh, love him. Yes. Yeah. Cornwell. His Viking books. You read the Sharp books, haven't you?
No, I've never read the Sharp books. You're always telling me to read those. I should read those.
Oh,
Right?
the Sharp books are great. The Sharp books, I think, are the best books in the English language that talk about how warfare was conducted between basically the 1600s and the American Civil War.
Is that right? I'll have to go back and read it. Yeah. No, he's
Oh,
still
yeah,
publishing.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So books. I read a little bit of nonfiction. Like I read books about. I like to read biographies. I recently read a book on Stonewall Jackson that was really riveting, man. I could not put that book down. Just
yeah, I go through phases. Like when we were working in Atlanta, because I kind of also I go, if I'm in a place, I like to know about that place. So like I have a good collection now of books about the the Tennessee campaigns, the North Georgia fighting, the Atlanta campaign, Sherman and everything from Chattanooga on, all that stuff. And then I like immersion. So that's why I started going to the battlefield, that National Historical Park up at Chattanooga, at Chickamauga, right? Chickamauga National Park.
That was amazing, man. Jeez.
Yeah. And then just all those back roads in Northwest Georgia there where you have so-and-so unit camped here, blah, blah, blah. I'm actually, I'm getting ready to do sort of a historical tour in northern Italy in another year or so to kind of do a deep dive into 10th Mountain Division and they're fighting up there.
Now you were part of a climbing group that went back to Italy, right?
Yeah, back in '95, I helped the 10th do their 50th anniversary reclimb of Riva Ridge in the Apennines.
Right. What was that like?
Which was prompted. Well, it was pretty cool. It was prompted by the fact that the previous June, there'd been a big celebration in Normandy for D-Day, right? It was the 50th anniversary. 82nd jumped in and a bunch of stuff happened. And a bunch of the old 10th Mountain vets said, wow, we should do something like that. So we ended up we had 13 of the original guys from the 10th. We had a 10-man climbing team from the new 10th. And me and another guy from the Mountain Battalion in Vermont. And basically, because it was all our gear that we used. It was all our equipment. Did you actually climb that again? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I went up. I went up and down that thing 3 different times. The first time as a recce, the second time as actually 4 times because we had to clear it. First time as a reconnaissance. Second time to actually install I designed a fixed rope system because there were some dangerous spots. So we just laid in the fixed rope system. And then the third time when we did it and actually 7 of the old vets actually came up the whole thing with us.
Really?
And then there was a big ceremony at the top. And then the
Yeah.
fourth time was the next day when we went up and cleared all the gear. But and then I went back 2 years ago for the 75th, and I went back up to Riva Ridge, and then there was a ceremony at the local ski area that a bunch of Italians and retired Italian Alpini did. I was the only American there, so I represented the U.S. and the 10th Mountain Division, skiing down the mountain with the 10th Mountain flag. It was pretty cool.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. So I'm going to go back there. I'm going to go back next winter. It's like the 78th, but I'll be back there for the 80th to hopefully represent with a little bit more of an American complement.
Did you ever work with a Bill David? He was a 10th Mountain guy.
What's his
Bill
name?
David was Bill David. He's a retired, I think, a 1 or 2 star general. He was the company commander for the 10th Mountain in Mogadishu.
Yeah. Okay.
He was the hero of the battle, basically. He went in and got everybody out. Bill David's.
Well, I mean, I know some of the guys that were. I know a buddy of mine who just retired out of third group, who at the time was a private, who was a 50 cal gunner on one of those Humvees of Bill David's, going back in to get those guys.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Bill David
actually,
at that time was a major. He was a company commander.
okay, so I'm going to ask my buddy if he knows him, because he would probably know him.
Bill David,
but I don't know him. Although 2 years after then, a battalion from the 10th came up here to Vermont to do a bunch of training. And it was kind of a reward for these guys because they'd been in the shit in Somalia and then in the shit in Haiti, right?
Yeah.
And so this was like a training event, but it was like a vacation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Play
good
up
for
in the
you.
park. Yeah. And I ran this thing for these guys. And it was a result of this that I ended up doing that 50th anniversary climb with the 10th in Italy the following winter. Not worth going into now the details, but at any rate, that's how that transpired. But he could have I could have met him, but I don't remember now.
Yeah. He's a really good. He was down. He ran the JRTC program after he retired for many years.
Right. He worked for Valiant.
Yes, as a program manager. Yeah. Bill David. Yeah. He's a really good dude, man. Yeah, he's a good dude. So, what kind of music you listening to lately?
I'll
throw a name at you, man.
What? Huh?
I'll throw a name at you. Helene Gramond, a French pianist.
Oh yeah, you told me about. I haven't listened to her yet. I listen to country music when I drive, primarily. I listen to when I'm at home. I listen pretty eclectic. I listen to jazz. I listen to some. I don't listen to as much classical, I think, as you listen to, because I grew up in a classical music listening family, and kind of as a reaction, I don't listen to much classical myself, because I had my fill of it when I was a kid. I listen to a lot of jazz. I listen to old rock and roll. I don't listen to much new stuff unless it's something that piques my interest, but I have real eclectic tastes, I have to say.
What about
and I'm always listen to whatever the pop music is, just because it's always different.
You know, it's amazing if you think about it. So back during the late 60s and 70s.
I lost you.
Yeah. So back in the late 60s and 70s, classic rock and roll, right? So think about it. okay, so from then to now is about 50 years, let's say, right? So
Right.
people now are still listening to classic rock and roll. So, but
Oh,
but
yeah.
in 1970, nobody was listening to music from the 1920s. You know what I'm saying?
Or the 40s.
Amazing.
I mean,
Or
yeah,
the 40s even,
no,
or the 50s even. I mean,
yeah,
classic rock
rock
and
and
roll has really had some serious staying power, you know?
well, because it's you know what? Because it was really the first people's music
Yeah, I guess you're right.
for
Never
white
thought of that.
people.
Yeah.
You know, because it comes from the first people's music for black people, right?
Yeah.
Blues and jazz, right? And then rock and roll came from that. So everything before then really had been, Tin Pan Alley, right? Had been written for the music industry and decided upon by agents and manager, what have you. But it was more, a top down driven thing. Rock and roll
Yeah.
was like, hey, let's get a band together. You, me, Billy Eider, and Steve Schwantz. Find somebody with a big garage, clean all the shit out of it, set up some drums, and let's start jamming and see if we can play some music, and then see if somebody will pay us to play it.
You know, I think if we had put together a group, I think you'd have to say, Hank Halick on drums, right? You'd have to put Billy Eider on lead guitar. I'd put you on piano, probably, and some vocals.
What would you do?
Steve Schwantz on bass, right?
Yeah.
Leaping Leon, man. He's got
Leaping Leon. Oh, he's a guitar player.
Yeah, he's a guitar player.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we would have had a hell of a good band, man. But what about whiskey, man? What kind of whiskey are you drinking these days?
Wait a second.
Oh, here we go. This is where this gets interesting.
I just got this.
Wow, look at that, huh? Is that a bourbon?
No, this is the legendary dark silky Irish whiskey.
Really?
A smoky blend made from double distilled and triple distilled peated single malts with grain whiskey. Yeah, it's not bad.
You know,
it's good.
It's if I had a nickel for every one of my friends, civilians, that looked at my Scotch collection and said, man, Rob, this is like drinking an ashtray, man. All these peaty scotches, Lafroig and Ardbeg and but there's nothing like a Lafroig with just a tiny splash, on a cold winter day, out on the back porch, snowing, the wind coming through. Lafroig, there you go, man. That is the best whiskey known to man. Bang for buck,
I love it. I love it.
$40 a bottle, man. You can't beat that stuff. I don't know if it's still $40 a bottle, but I mean,
it's like 50 now. I think I can pick it up for 55 in the state liquor store here. But still,
remember that guy down at the Atlanta liquor store? The stuff we used to buy from that guy? That place was amazing.
The liquor store on the west side.
Yeah, man. That was like going into a library. I could never go in and come out with less than like 3 or 4 bottles of scotch or bourbon or something.
As a result of what that guy told us one time, I still probably have 8 or 9 bottles of Connemara Irish whiskey downstairs in the basement, cask strength, peated single malt. It's basically let's see, it's 50, so it's like 116 proof. Basically, it's like getting a shot of Novocaine at the dentist's office. Your mouth goes numb sipping that stuff.
Right.
But
Yes.
when we were there, I got that because when you and I were in that liquor store and I asked him if they had Connemara, and he said, no, you can't buy it in the States because Jim Beam bought the distillery and they are shutting down supply and then they're going to kick the price up. And he was exactly right.
Yeah.
And so when it disappeared, you could buy it for like $52 or $55 a bottle. When it came back on the market 2 years later, it was $75 a bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's some good stuff. You know, I've been drinking some bourbon, but man, I go back to that 10-year Macallan. It's good too. Much more so than the 15. You know, the 15 years is a little bit too oaky for me, but the 10 and the 12, you know, in that wine barrel, stuff is money, man.
I'm sort of this is my peasant taste coming out. I stick with what I know, and what I know and love is those peated whiskeys off of Isla.
Yeah, Isla.
So I pretty much. Speaking of which, have you guys made a trip to Scotland yet? You and Stephanie?
That's on our list. We got to go to Scotland. Yeah.
Well, just don't forget, if you decide to do that, let me know, because I haven't made my trip either, and I want to one of these days. I have a neighbor next door. They're getting ready to do their third trip to Scotland next year, and so I'm envious.
You want to come along with us? We can
Well,
go.
I might meet you there.
Yeah, meet us there with your new bride. You know?
Could happen.
It better happen, man. No, man.
Actually,
my dream is
if I meet you there and that happens, then that will happen, because I'll never go anywhere without her.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's like,
but
I can't go on vacations. I will not go on a vacation without Stephanie. It's like, I come over here to Abu Dhabi. I don't do anything. I come over here, I work, and then I work in my recruiting business.
Yeah.
I'm in a hotel most of the time. You know, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, there's Ferrari World, there's Walt Disney, there's like a million things, golf courses you could spend money on. But you know what? I just don't even have any interest in going out and just spending a bunch of money on vacation type stuff, because I'm only going to do it when I'm with my wife, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just not fun, you know? So, yeah, I think we're going to have to go to Scotland. I mean, it's not that big of a trip. I mean, it's what, about a 6-hour flight or something? It's not that big of a deal, man. You know?
Oh, no. Yeah. You fly to either Glasgow or Edinburgh. It's 6 hours from the States.
And I think what we would do is, you know, my wife really likes that show. The show about where the guy and the gal go back in time, you know, it was based on a long-running set of books, and it's set in Scotland. So I think if we go,
I think I know of it, by a woman named Diana Gabaldon, right?
Yes.
That's the author?
Yes.
Okay. I've never read any of, but I've heard about her. I've heard about those books. I've heard they're pretty good, but I never read any.
Yeah, and the series is just incredible. It's been going on like 7 or 8 years or something like that. So I think what we'll do is we have to go to Ireland. I mean, we have to go to Scotland to like retrace all those steps, you know, and go to the same places that are in the movie, the battlefields and everything, and then take the ferry over to Isla and just hang out. That would be a blast. Yeah. You know.
Oh, so speaking of retracing and speaking of Cornwall, the shark books, the first shark books take place in India, where the British are fighting either the Indians or the French or combinations back in the 1790s. And then the bulk of the books take place in Portugal and Spain, fighting in the Napoleonic Wars, the
Really?
Peninsular Campaign. Yeah.
Oh, no.
And great stuff. But every single Sharp book, and I think a lot of the Viking books are similar, but the Sharp books especially, every single one has at least one and sometimes two major battles of the Peninsular Campaign as basically characters in the book, with diagrams of the battlefield and then descriptions at the end of the book about what the battlefield is like and how you can visit it today and what still is there. Right?
Is that right? Really? Wow.
Yeah. And
That's
so,
amazing.
like if I was going to take a trip to Portugal and Spain, I would definitely reread those books and then photocopy that last page of each one. Or listen to me, I'm old school, photocopy. Take a picture of my phone. And
now the other one, yeah, I like how Cornwell does that. Like in the last, in the 100 Years' War, the book about, Agincourt and
right,
all that.
Right.
Those characters just come to life and they make the book that much more enjoyable because you're reading about, you feel like you're there with that guy. I mean, you're rooting for that guy,
He's a great author. Oh, I know. And something reminds me, and I don't know if we've talked about this before. Have you ever heard of an author named George MacDonald Fraser?
Yes, I've heard of him.
Flashman, the Flashman Chronicles.
Yeah.
Have you ever read him?
No, but I've had many people tell me, Rob, based on your background and everything, you got to read the Flashman. I've had.
Oh, you should.
Tell me, you should read the Flash.
You should. Yeah. So
have you?
I'm going to get some more water here.
Okay. The Flashman.
So, yeah.
He was over there like in Afghanistan and stuff, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah. So, a classic book from Victorian England is called Tom Brown's School Days. And it's about this guy named Tom Brown who goes to Eton, I think.
Yeah.
That famous school. And and there's an ancillary character in Tom Brown's School Days called Harry Flashman, who, yes, who's like an ancillary character in that book, and he's an asshole, right? He's a upperclassman he's a drunkard, he's a braggart, he's a bully, he's a liar, and he's a thief, right? He's all these things, and he's a coward.
Is that why people want me to read about?
Well, no, hear me out. So what George MacDonald Fraser did, he's a great historical novelist and a historian in his own right, but what he did is he took the Flashman character and used him as his main character. He resurrected him, right?
Yeah.
Using all those character flaws, because Harry Flashman is this big, he's like 6'2", 6'3". He's a well put together, buff young man who's a coward, a liar, a braggart, a bully, and a thief, and a drunkard, right? But he's completely unabashedly proud of all that. And his self-awareness extends to the fact that he knows he's a shitbag. And
self-awareness.
But but he's honest about it, right? So what's interesting is when he gets terrified and scared, he gets red in the face, and most people get white in the face, right? But he blushes, right? And so when he's terrified, people think he's really angry, right? Which has helped him in situations. So it starts out, he's a young lieutenant or something involved in Afghanistan. He gets captured and I haven't read these books for years, but I used to. I read all of them many years ago. But through Harry Flashman, George MacDonald Fraser gets to talk to you about the wars in Afghanistan and stuff in Africa and stuff in Eastern Europe. And he's a little bighorn. He's a little bighorn as a British observer. Oh yeah.
So this guy sort of just shows up at these battles. It's the same guy, or is it like a relative or something?
No, it's Harry Flashman, but he goes through life, but these battles sort of also are characters in each book, just like Cornwell does. And then the interesting thing is, I ran into a book, and I have it around here somewhere. George MacDonald Fraser, he's Scottish from southern Scotland, from the border region with northern England. Yeah. And he wrote a book called The Reivers, Rievers. And reiving is a verb which means to sort of raid.
How do you spell that again?
It's like Rievers. Okay. Yep, got it. So, and this is something I kind of didn't know. I may have had an inkling of it, but it explains a lot. But the border between England and Scotland, the border country, was a zone of confrontation for like 300 or 400 years.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Before Scotland was absorbed into the British kingdom. And as such, it has a rich history of cattle raids and blood vengeance and theft and murder and smuggling. That's 3 centuries long, right?
Oh,
and so the people that lived up there, the Northern English and the Southern Scots, sometimes related to each other, were probably the most warlike and violent and quick to fight people in all the British Isles.
Wow, really?
Right? And these and when they finally cleaned up that area and pacified it, they shipped out lots of those Scots from southern Scotland to Northern Ireland to use them as colonists in the plantation of Northern Ireland.
No kidding, I didn't know that.
Yes. And when there was a big outward migration from Ireland and Scotland to the colonies, a lot of them were Scots, Irish Protestants from Northern Ireland that came over to the States and became the basis of the Scots-Irish population in the Appalachians and the Southeast.
No kidding, I did not know that.
Yeah, so the fact that
wow,
possibly if you want to break down sort of warlike tendencies, combative tendencies in ethnic groups in the United States, your Scots-Irish are probably some of the quickest to go to fighting that there are, and it has a historical basis that goes back more than half a millennium.
Yeah, maybe that's where they got the quick temper from. They were just sick and tired of putting up with the damn Brits.
You got to quick temper because the Scots were raiding south into England, and the English were raiding north into Scotland, and they were doing it for 300 years, right? So. Yeah. So at any rate, it's interesting, and I finally put all that together a couple of years ago. And yeah, it explains a lot because you say Scots, well, the Scots-Irish in the States, right? The Scots-Irish who were basically the mountain fighters in the South, in Virginia and the Carolinas, who came from the other side of the mountains back over, for instance, to kill all those loyalist troops. On Kings Mountain in South Carolina, south of Charlotte.
Yeah, I think that led to cow pens, right?
I
in the
forget
Revolutionary
which
War.
was first. It might. I forget which. I thought Cowpens was before that, but I don't remember.
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But anyway, Kings Mountain. That's a cool spot if you're ever worked down by Charlotte.
Yeah.
Because Kings Mountain is like less than an hour's drive to the south.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Oh,
below. It's just below the South Carolina line, just off the interstate.
I'm just looking at this now. So I'm like casually adding up all these books now. We talked about my library was tapped out. We got the Harry Flashman set. I think that's what, like
Yes.
25 or 30 books or something. We got
It's a lot.
we got Bernard Cornwell. I'm about to get back into him. That's
Yes.
that's at least
The
another
Sharp
15.
books.
The Sharp, but that's at least another 25 or 30. You got
Yeah.
the Reavers, you got Tom Brown School Days, you got,
Well,
you know,
I wouldn't necessarily
Butcher's
read Tom
Day.
Brown's School Days.
I mean, we're talking like 50, 60 books here. Stephanie's gonna have a heart attack if like,
Well,
a
you don't
box
have to
truck
do it
pulls
next
up.
week.
I'd rather just get the pain over with all at once. An Amazon Prime box truck shows up at the house. It's some guy with a forklift. He gets out these books, you know. It's like a pallet full of books, you know. And and of course, I'm gonna say, look at, I had a conversation with Peter Gold. He recommended these
No,
books.
stop right here. Stop right here. Don't blame me for this when you talk to her about this. No, you need to take full responsibility for this yourself.
You know, I'm gonna have to have them delivered at a friend's house, and then I'm gonna have to slowly figure out how I can get him the money, and then slowly bring him over like at night. After a neighborhood party, I'll bring in 2 or 3 under my shirt or something, and slowly
Dude.
build them up.
Just use your professional skills, and you'll figure this out.
I think I'm gonna have to start adding some bookshelves in my office now, but I just don't want to turn my office into a library. You know what I mean? I've got whiteboards on the board, and I got business, you know, stuff. I got my calendar, schedule, but that may, as I get a little bit older here, that's all going to have to come down to only to be replaced by more bookshelves and whiskey cabinets, I think, you know.
There you go.
Whiskey cabinets, yeah. Hey, Pete, it's been great talking to you, brother. We're gonna have to get, you know, there's a lot more I want to get to here. We're gonna have to continue this in a part 2. So
Okay.
stay on this, okay?